Welcome to the Pinelander Podcast, the official podcast of Pineland, broadcasting to you from an undisclosed location deep inside Pineland, where we discuss faith, family, finances, firearms, freedom, food, and everything else in between, with those who believe in living free and living out the values that made this country free. All right, welcome to your Pinelander podcast. This is Paul LaFavor, and I've got my ranger buddy, Mike Blackburn, here. And we're just trucking right along with 2025. I have to get used to writing those new years. I think I'm almost down, because you write the checks, and you're like, I did it again. And as we get further into this year, something that, you may hear at church or others, your pastor may talk about, is it is a new year. It can be a new you, right? Mm-hmm. So you got a wonderful chance, even though we're going into February, still a wonderful chance to make a new you in all ways, remake, let's say, your body. That's something we want to talk about today. We're bringing in our good friend, Jason Dougherty. Mm-hmm. They have Fox and Friends, where we have Pinelander Podcast and Friends. He's been on the podcast a few times before, but welcome, Jason. How you doing, sir?
I'm well, thank you. I'm excited to be here. This is a great topic, too.
Yeah, I'm, Mike and Jason, I'm excited about this topic because I think I have a lot I can benefit from this. And I think, as a country, maybe everybody could listen to the podcast, so it would be good for them. I know that Jason is a studly guy. I've seen a picture of him running around doing events. When I just read recently the Center of Disease Control, and they threw out some stats, and it was a little depressing when you look at the American male. Now, not to get depressed, right off the cuff, but I think, where we are as American men in general is not where we used to be, not where we want to be. Let me just throw some metrics out at you. The Center of Disease Control says percentage of overweight and obese men are 34%. 34% of all men, we're talking 18 years and older,
wow,
they're worthless fat bodies. Yeah. Sorry. And 43% are obese.
Yeah.
Now, just think about that. I mean, I'm just let that sink in. 43 now, obese. Now we could define that in different ways, but yeah.
No, and I think everyone knows that. If you're getting out of the house and just kind of meandering around, I mean, you look around and you go, man, we're getting big.
Yeah, you go to the mall and you're like, it's a lot of big guys here, but they don't hit the gym. They're just big in other ways. 40 size 40 something pants. You're like, wow. And then I would say, what does that mean? Well, I mean, if we look at Mike Rowe and his stats are there's 7 million active or 7 million like able-bodied men, small able-bodied, but they're sitting out of their workforce.
Yeah,
and
crazy.
they're sitting out of the workforce on the couch.
Yeah.
And they're just plugging away at a bag of chips, just going to town on that. Now, how does that affect your health? How does that affect your longevity? How does it affect where American men are today? I mean, that's easy, but as we look at this, it affects not only your longevity, but then also your outlook.
Yeah, your psyche.
Your psychological outlook, your mentality. What do you have to bring to the workforce? I mean, all these things. It hits everything.
All tied in, yeah.
So I wanted to I think in a negative way, set that stage for you, Jason. But I think what you have, I think most of the guys that listen to this are not worthless fat bodies. They're not guys on the couch.
No.
But we could take, I think, and every time I hear you, I have a notepad and pencil, and I think that we can all glean from some of the wisdom that you have as far as working out, eating right, having a right mindset. I think as we start this new year, we can throw that into our tool bag and be a better us. What do you think? How do we want to branch off from that?
Well, I will say this, and I know Jason personally, and I've spent time with Jason. But I've lost 15 pounds since knowing Jason and reading Be a Boxer, for instance. And he goes into this a little bit in Be a Boxer, maybe quite a bit, but it's made a big difference in my life personally, physically and otherwise. So I'm just really excited about having Jason on, and hopefully others can also benefit like I've benefited from great advice. So, Jason, we're going to turn it over to you.
Right on. So I got a couple things. One, the CDC stuff got me thinking. But so I don't forget, physical fitness has played such a large part in my life that when I wrote a book like Be a Boxer, which is not about physical fitness, it's an accessible analogy for so many different things, which is why I use some of the principles that I've learned over time with regard to training to attempt to describe other things, because our physical wellness touches every other part of our bodies. And I say again and again in Boxer that we're a system of systems, and our physical capacity and well-being and health is a system that affects our psychological and our spiritual and our gut health and our sleep quality and our relationships and everything else. And the thing about New Year's resolutions, I'm not a fan. However, because everybody knows the experience of you show up back to the gym the first week of January and it is packed full. Mm-hmm. Right? Like you can't even, you're just like, I don't even know.
Yeah.
But it's just like, just be patient, man. By the last week of February, you'll have all the equipment back to yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. That's how New Year's resolutions work. But there's something about that flip from one year to the next when people realize what has happened to them or what they have allowed to happen to them over the past year or maybe the past 5 years. It's insidious. So in the same way that you don't train hard and gain, say, 50 pounds of muscle in 30 days, you don't gain it or lose it that way either. Like it's very few people who set out to get as fat as possible, but due to lifestyle changes and you get in the workforce and then you have a family and all kinds of things happen, there's some statistic around once you hit about 35, you're going to gain 5 pounds a year. And you don't really notice 5 pounds a year that much. I mean, that's not even a pound a month. It's like a half a pound a month. And then, but if that goes unchecked, then 5 years from now, you're 25 pounds heavier. And 10 years from now, you're 50 pounds heavier. Mm-hmm. Right? It sneaks up on you. And so that's what the New Year's resolution is, just people for a moment saying, like, damn, when they look in the mirror and they're like,
what happened?
And so that it's good in that respect.
More of me to love.
Yeah. But making a big promise about a new year, a new me, it lacks, there's not any built-in perseverance there, because the decision isn't what teaches me perseverance. It's the doing that does.
Yes.
I learn it through action. I learn perseverance and endurance through action. And so back to the CDC, a guy named Greg Glassman one time did this little chart. And if you picture like a dial on your dashboard in your car, like your oil, the heat dial or something like that. And on the left, it's cold, and on the right, it's hot. And in the middle, there's this window. If the needle's pointing directly up, then you're kind of in the zone. That's where you want to be, And so what organizations like the CDC do, and, the American Medical Association and whoever, is they will determine what they think are metrics for what a healthy person looks like. And we all know these. It's like blood pressure and cholesterol, and they might get into some other stuff when they do blood work. And there's this window there, and they're going to say this person is healthy. And if that needle goes to the left, that person is getting sicker. If the needle's all the way to the left, you have comorbidities, or what they would define as maybe full-blown obesity and everything that goes along with it. All of the things that a person suffers from when they're in that condition, because they become susceptible to all kinds of other stuff. And so you say you have sick on the left, what the medical establishment would define as healthy in the middle. On the right is fitness. That's the way I think of it. That's the way Glassman described it. So you got a high level athlete, man, and that needle's pointing really far down to the right. Well, if I do that long enough, I could quit everything. I could start eating like crap and not train. Well, that needle's going to move slowly back to the middle, right? I'm going to remain fit. I would actually have to get sicker to be what the medical establishment defines as healthy. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So when the CDC's talking about, hey, we got X number of million or a percentage of men who are obese, well, the other thing that they do is they slide the scale, meaning that it's kind of like when, the DOD can't meet its recruiting standards, they lower the standards. Right? Oh, now it's the standard, but it's lower than the old standard. Well, the medical establishment does that too. Or they'll cherry pick things so that they can make you a patient for life and put you on drugs. So that's a whole nother conversation. But the point of it is that don't let the medical establishment tell you what healthy looks like, because they lie to us all the time. And when they're not lying, they don't really know what they're doing. And it takes a highly specialized medical professional to actually know a lot, to have depth on one small thing, right? Everybody else they're just practicing, man. And a lot of it is they try to solve it with drugs. And so much of the health problems and obesity and stuff can be solved with nutrition and just moving around, because our bodies are designed to do that. They'll heal themselves.
Isn't that really the problem, though? It seems like everything with technology has to do with being sedentary.
Yep.
I mean, that's really the battle.
Well, historically speaking, physical fitness has been a thing. The Greeks invented the Olympics, over 2,000 years ago? How long ago? Whenever?
Long time.
Yeah, athletics.
700 BC.
Yeah, man. It was like Aristotle or one of those cats said, if I got transported to the future, I wouldn't want to talk to the philosophers. I don't want to talk to the boxers, because they know the deal, right? Philosophers just read stuff and have big thoughts. Boxers get in the ring. There's a difference.
Hey, so you mentioned Aristotle, right? And the philosophers like Aristotle, they emphasize the importance of first principles. So maybe if you could back this out as wide as we could, widen the aperture. How do we set this whole table? I mean, you kind of teased out some of the things already, but what's the first principle involved with being healthy and working out and all that?
Well, the first principle is that you have to do it to know it, right? Training is about knowledge gained through experience, and experience comes from practicing and doing. And so there is no other path. I had a T-shirt from a gym one time, and it had a plate on the back, and a 45-pound plate, and it said, "Here's your magic pill." That's it. And people don't want to hear that. I can't download an app to make me, I actually just have to do this stuff. When I was in college, I came across, remember Henry Rollins? I think he was in Black Flag. He was the punk rocker dude. He wrote this really cool essay because, he was not a healthy dude. I mean, he was in a punk rock band, and he stumbled into a gym somehow and started training and lifting weights, and it changed his life. And he wrote this little essay about it. And what he said is, it's the one place he could go where he was never lied to, because 200 pounds is always 200 pounds.
That's right.
200 pounds doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care if you didn't get any sleep last night. It doesn't care what kind of person you are. It doesn't care if you mean well. 200 pounds is 200 pounds, man. And it's always going to give you honest feedback. So he said, he's getting philosophical about it. But when you talk about first principles, one's the work's got to get done. And people probably get tired of hearing me say that consistency is the prime variable. That it's better for someone to do half of what they think they can do 5 days a week than shoot for the moon and do it twice a month.
See, that's the game changer. That was the game changer in my life, and we talked about the flaws of the New Year's resolution, and that was really the game changer. Was when I understood. You say just do it, but it is just do it, and things have to become a habit, because it's so easy. In your daily routine, if you will, you have those things that you're going to do. I mean, you have things in your daily routine that they're non-negotiable. These things are happening. And I guess the thing that really made a difference in my life was the fact that I had to start doing some behavior. I had to start doing something and continually doing it so it became a habit. And then it was later, you can't do it for the reward. The reward just comes. I think too many people are looking to, get here or get there or achieve this or achieve that. And that's not really it, because I don't think that's the thing that drives you. I think the thing that drives you is just doing it and it becoming part of who you are and part of your psyche and part of your thought process, and nothing else replaces it. And then all the rewards just seem to flow afterwards. And that was like a totally different way of looking at things for me.
I'm glad you brought that up. So by way of planning, if somebody's listening, they're like, all right, man, I'm gonna start getting after it. The way I do it that works for me is, if I want to either start or improve something, and it can be anything. Say I want to read more, or I want to learn a musical instrument or foreign language, or I want to get fitter. What I do is I look at the rhythm of my day, like you were talking about, and it's different for everybody. Depends on what your job's like and what your family's like and whatever. But you make a commitment. You find that 30 minutes every single day when the world doesn't get a vote. So for a lot of people, that's either going to be early in the morning. For some people, it's going to be late at night. It kind of depends on what your battle rhythm's like. For me, it's always early in the morning. So I find the time first, and I say, that block of time is dedicated for this many days per week to this activity. And then say I'm brand new, say I'm the guy that wakes up and he's, 50 pounds overweight, and he's like, man, what happened to him? I used to run track in high school, and well, the problem with New Year's resolutions is that there's no direct path to a new year, a new me. I got to start one thing and stop one thing, because effective training over time is as much about what you don't do as what you do. And that gets into a lot of that has to do with nutrition, but you can 20/80 the value of training, meaning you can apply the Pareto principle to it, because 20% of the activities that you do, say in a weight room, are going to yield 80% of the results, which is a good thing to know if you don't have a ton of time. So without getting into all that, you block that time out, and instead of saying I'm going to I'm going to lose some ridiculous amount of weight, or I'm going to get back to running as fast as I did in high school. You said 30 minutes, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning at 5 a.m. I'm going to walk for 30 minutes. Don't get hurt. Don't hurt yourself. That's another principle that I've learned the hard way over the years. Don't get hurt. Start small, because the important thing that's happening in the beginning is that you've blocked out the time and you're using the time for that activity.
That's right.
Yep. And it doesn't matter what you do. Like, you don't even have to change. What you have to do is do the thing. You don't need to worry about programming. You don't need to worry about setting goals. Start one thing and stop one thing. So a great program for somebody who's just getting off the couch for the first time in a decade. Say, listen, man, 30 minutes, 3 days a week. It's the same time. It doesn't matter if you're on vacation or you're staying at your in-laws' house or your mother-in-law's living with you. Like, it doesn't matter. You find the time when nobody can screw with it. Mm-hmm. And then you go on a 30-minute walk. That's what you're going to start doing. And you're going to stop eating sugar. Hey, it may not even be you're going to stop eating sugar. It may just be you're going to stop drinking soda. Pick one thing that you can stop that you know is not good for you, and one thing to start, and do it at least for 30 days. Now you got time blocked off, and now you can start plugging stuff into the time slot. Different things can go in that time slot. Okay, now I want to start maybe doing some push-ups. So, you know what I mean? Then you could start to add to your program in that time slot, but it's the time slot you got to establish first. That's the habit.
Isn't that the reason why so many people like fail? Is it maybe just trying to bite off too much too soon?
Oh, 100%.
I mean, it's got to just be small little steps, right?
You do, yeah. That's why I like the idea of starting one thing and stopping one thing, because it doesn't. If I look at the totality of my life, I can be overwhelmed with, God, there's no way for me to get from here to where I want to go. But I can always start one thing and stop one thing. And if I do that for 30 days, then, now I got that handled. So now I can start one other thing and stop one other thing. And if I do that for an entire year, maybe my 30 minutes at some point turns into 45. So I'm getting a little more training in, and I'm doing some heavier lifting, so to speak. And then maybe I'm stopping one bad habit at a time. It could take an entire 12 months. Maybe I'm addicted to sugar. So first, it takes me 30 days just to taper off drinking soda. And it takes me another 30 days to get used to drinking water. And then I'm going to take one more thing away. Right. And so over time, that's where the consistency plays a part, because 12 months from now, I'm going to look a whole lot different, man, if I can do that.
Yes.
Yep. And if you're coming in, you're ahead of the game. Like, if you're somebody who's already training, you're just not getting the results you want. Well, you're already ahead of the game because you got your time blocked off. But you got to take the long view on that kind of stuff. Oh, the other thing you talked about, reward, Mike, you mentioned reward versus growth. Say that mindset. We see a lot of that I just see a lot of that kind of in contemporary culture, where it's like, man, if I go work out, then I'm going to swing by for the big Frappuccino after to reward myself. Well, I actually listened to Andrew Huberman talked about this, and he talked about the neurobiological value of placing the emphasis on the work and not on the reward. Because the long-term benefits of deriving pleasure from the work versus the short-term pleasure from any reward that you give yourself, it actually affects your baseline dopamine levels over time. Meaning that the reward is a dopamine spike. But if you can learn to derive the pleasure from the work itself, that raises your baseline dopamine level, which you get to enjoy all day, every day.
Yeah, that's the game changer right there.
Yeah, man. And so one of the ways, and I talk about this in Boxer, the idea of flipping a coin. So, and Huberman touched on it. I was surprised that he said flip a coin. I was like, man, I'm down with that. But basically, say you have you like to get pumped up for your training. And so you're going to drink a pre-workout deal, or you're going to hit some kind of whatever before you go to get all amped up. And then you're going to listen to your music, and then you're going to have your high speed, workout clothes on. And, it's going to be in an air conditioned space. And then after you get done, you're going to reward yourself with whatever treat you like to have. Well, none of those are necessarily bad things. Listening to music or doing a pre-workout shake or whatever, but flip a coin and let the coin decide whether or not you get it. So I do a lot of this at the Sanctum, which is anywhere that I'm training, I call it the Sanctum. There's a story behind that. But down at the Sanctum, there's no climate control ever. And I roll dice to see whether or not we're listening to music. It's random. I've even gotten to the point sometimes where I'll do my entire programming where I'm going to roll the dice and it's going to tell me how hard it's going to be. So that you get this intermittent dose. And so sometimes, it's like, hey, do I get to take do my shot of espresso before I go to the gym or drink my little energy shake or whatever? I flip a coin, it says, no, I don't get to have it. I get down there, I flip the coin again, no music, no climate control. Flip the coin, oh, maybe I'm training in jeans today. That's a fun one. You can do this kind of stuff because what it does is it makes you appreciate so much more the days when you get music, or the days when you get the treat after, or whatever it is. And so those dopamine levels just get higher and higher, and your emphasis becomes on enjoying the work itself. And there's a huge value in that, and you almost can't articulate it without experiencing it. I just want to throw that out there.
Well, the one adding the one thing and the taking away the one thing was an absolute game changer for me, like you talked about. But it was all the follow-on stuff that comes from that, because you feel better, and it ends up driving you into that next thing because you see the benefits of it. But you mentioned the flipping the coin, and of course I hate to kind of flip topics here, but that seemed to kind of remind me a little bit of sort of like some of the things that you read like in Stoicism as well, sort of the randomness and the not being really prepared, kind of being off guard sometimes, and the benefits of that, I suppose.
Yeah. And I mentioned to y'all recently that I was reading about the Amish, and an Amish congregation has one bishop, and the bishop is appointed for life, and it is not a paid position. And so the community will nominate, a handful of men as the potential new bishop when the old one dies. And they go Old Testament style back to when there were 12 apostles, and then there were 11, and they had to find a new one, and they cast lots for him. They had a couple of nominees, they cast lots, and then I think who was it, Matthias, or who was I can't remember. But they do a similar kind of let God decide who the new bishop is. They do that, and you do see it in Stoicism as well. And what it boils down to, in the case of faith, religious faith, it is trusting God. In the case of Stoicism, it is being comfortable with not getting my own way. I don't always get to get what I want. And the more comfortable I am with that, then the easier a lot of things are for me to reach for and get to. And a lot of this is kind of philosophical on the fitness side. There's, I'd like to get into some specifics for anybody who's interested, but one kind of principle or first principle for me is that count the costs, meaning that you're going to pay now or you're going to pay later, but you're going to pay.
That's true.
Right. So when you think about health and fitness, and this applies to discipleship for me too, say on the religious side, but you're going to pay. And the cost of short-term commitment, the small costs that you make day in and day out, they save you a balloon payment down the road.
like the way you put that.
Yep. So we're all going to pay. And really the great thing is that we can choose. We can choose. I'll take a little discomfort now so that when I'm 80 years old, I can still walk up and down the stairs.
Right on, man. I mean, fantastic material. So one of the ideas I had while you were waxing, and you do wax philosophically very well. I like to hear it. But so one of the big things when it comes to working out for me, and I could be maybe, I don't know if I'm the quintessential army type, but I think of strength training versus cardio. In those two things, like some guys are like, okay, I'm a runner. Some guys are like, I lift. So
right.
I think you're a guy that does both. So maybe you could just, for my benefit, at least, as I don't have a really good workout routine, how would you create a good workout routine for me being 52? Just kind of like spitballing.
Man,
I'm being selfish here right now too.
Well, no, and I'm glad you asked that question, Paul, because the other thing too is I'm wondering if maybe, because that's kind of like how we look at fitness. It's like cardio versus, strength training.
I'm not sure if I could just,
and I'm not sure if
like
even
that,
that's even like the way to even look at it anymore.
Yeah, maybe not.
Man, I'm just stoked you brought it up, because it was a turning point in my own fitness journey, most of which is 25 years in the military. So I had high school and college, and then I had 25 years in military, and then I've had, I can't remember now, but like 7 years since. So, and I'm getting older now, so my training's changed a lot, and I'm 52 as well. I do a lot of physical therapy now that's baked into my training, but I'll get to that now. But the strength versus cardio thing is one of the most pervasive and incorrect myths that has twisted programming over the last, at least since the 80s, because that's when I started. So, when I was in high school, I went to the gym and they had the like Dolph Lundgren posters, and everybody had like the cutoff. They'd take a t-shirt, but then you cut it into a tank top. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man. And there were some dudes that were like, they seemed to me, to a skinny 14, 15-year-old kid, I mean, these guys seem like animals. And I wanted to be like that. And then when I went to the Marine Corps, all I wanted to do was get as big as possible. But I played football, so I never really ran any long distance. I remember the first time I ran 4 miles, I spent the second half of it puking the whole time. Like, I mean, and then it was my my recruiter. It took me on a 4-mile run, dude, and I never ran longer than like a lucky pass I caught once, on a football field. Mm-hmm. And I was throwing up, and he's like, "Yeah, if you can keep running while you're puking, you're going to be good." And I'm like, "This is going to be," man. I really was like second guessing my decision making at that point. Like, what am I getting into?
Yeah.
So I got as big as possible, and I had this guy that I was going to school in the Marine Corps with. He and I were our training partners, and we went down to got ourselves Cybergenics, which is like as big as possible program. And I went from about 170 pounds to like 215. And then after my first tour, I started like kind of aiming toward more of the units that would require like a ruck-based selection, right? And so I realized, man, I got to be able to run, I got to be able to swim, I got to be able to ruck. So I lost 40 pounds and I got into that. And I thought, in my mind, you can be strong or you can be an endurance guy. And so I quit lifting weights. I did nothing but calisthenics, run, ruck, swim, calisthenics. That was it. And, you know, some of those training sessions were like 3 hours long because it takes a long time to get the reps in that you need. And it wasn't until a deployment in 2010 that all of that changed for me. I started doing, there was a guy named, his name's John Wellborn. He played in the NFL for 10 years. And when he retired, he started something called CrossFit football. So he took the kind of red line, respiratory endurance, stamina, coordination, agility stuff from CrossFit. And then he took all of the strength training that he had learned in the NFL and he made a program out of it. And so up until that point, you know, I'd gone from being an endurance athlete to being a CrossFit guy. And then I started doing CrossFit football. And this is like, I was deployed like 9 months. And it was the perfect storm for me because we had really good chow. We had this contract Puerto Ricans cooking at this Navy chow hall, and it was like legit. And then we had our own gym on the compound, right? And so me and these 3 dudes started doing CrossFit football. And the stronger I got, it was the first time I ever really did like back squats and deadlifts and like all this, you know, cleans, like Olympic lifts and stuff like that. I'd screwed around in CrossFit, but I was so bad at it. I would just like try to avoid it because I was always hurting myself. Well, we got super into it. And the stronger I got, the faster I could run. Mm-hmm. Yep. Because you do a slow lift section and then you do like a little mini kind of redliner CrossFit style deal. So we were getting both in every workout. And it was like 5 days a week. And that's when I realized like that separating those two things is not how it works. You can have both. The stronger you are, the more stamina you have, the heavier you can lift. The heavier you lift and the stronger you get, the faster you can run and the longer you'll last. Yeah. I mean, game changer for me. Now and so I started working out in the 80s and I didn't learn that until 2010. Yeah. I just thought you couldn't have both. That's how it works, but it's not true. Just telling you. Now, so what I think fitness is simply a body at its ideal weight, capable of performing natural feats of movement based on human movement patterns and strength across many domains. It's what you hear talked about as general physical preparedness. So, Paul, when you say like you seem like you're the type of guy who just kind of does all of it, that's really what it falls into, is a general physical preparedness category of, say, a domain of fitness. And a lot of people will focus on different things like respiratory endurance, you know, that's a runner's thing, or strength, you know, or power. If you're say a football player, you want power, you want to be able to generate hard hits, which is strength combined with speed. But general physical preparedness, really you're going to want a dose of all those things. And then the older you get, like I've learned the hard way, as I've started to have aches and pains and nagging stuff that just won't go away, and bad back, and what old guys always get, you know, overuse injuries from all our time in the gun club. I had more hard landings than your average dude just because it's just kind of how I am. I like to land on my head, man. And that stuff catches up to you, you know. But when you get into programming, you know, programming is simply, it's a structured approach to training aimed at taxing or challenging the body in targeted ways to enhance capacity, what people would think of as performance, like in specific domains or areas. And so I always point people toward functional capacity as opposed to body parts. Don't think of training in terms of body parts. Think of it in terms of I want to be able to do these things. And so the movements that I want to do, I want them to mimic in some way what I will do in real life. You know, I like that. That's why I say when I'm 80, I want to be able to walk up and down a set of stairs. Right. So when I get my mom a program, you know, she's 78. I say, this is what I want you to do. I want you to sit in a chair and stand up. And you do that 5 to 10 times. And I want you to do it 3 times a day. And 3 times a day, I want you to get on the floor and get back up.
Yes, that makes complete sense. Because we've all
that's her program.
Well, I mean, just because I'm just, you know, I'm listening to you talk, and of course Paul's probably the same way. I mean, I'm picturing these people that I've seen that they look great. Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at them and you go, damn. I mean, you know, that guy's buffed, but that joker can't do anything. I mean, he's just incapable of doing like, hey, come on over here and give me a hand with this or something. I mean, his functionality is limited. Because he's so used to like doing whatever kind of workout he's doing, which is really just lifting a bar or something. I mean, lifting a weight. Yeah. And so when you have him do like, hey, give me a hand, you know, moving, you know, that guy's getting hurt. He looks uncoordinated. He doesn't look like he's, you know, able to get in under something or lift something or, you know, and it's kind of, it blows your mind. But I think all of us have kind of run into that guy that looks good, works out, you know, he's really big into fitness, but functionally is just, you know, he's very limited.
Yeah.
Because this is not the way he trains. And so, I mean, I mean, that's resonating a lot with me. You know, your ability to, you know, live your life, you know, and not be hurt doing it.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing too, Jason, is the way you are approaching physical fitness is going to depend on a number of variables. It's going to be, obviously, you're going to have your lifestyle, your work, where you can work out, what your goals are. I mean, what particularly are you trying to work on, like lose weight, gain strength, all of the above. And then, so there's a lot more to it than just, but I mean, it does begin with, I guess what I'm saying is there's a lot involved with this, but it all starts with motivation. You actually have to care. You have to actually want to do something. And it starts with that.
You do have to care. And there are a couple things what you just said, Paul. One, you don't need equipment to get fit. You don't need any equipment. And that could take some explaining, but that's the truth.
I agree.
There's so many things you can just do with your body, or you can take it on down to like your local playground. Man, you can do pull-ups at the playground. You can do handstand push-ups at the playground. You can make yourself throw up on the merry-go-round. Like you can do all kinds of stuff at a playground. I used to take the Marines to the playground. They hated that workout. You know, it was a 6-mile loop. Playground was at mile 3, and they're like, "Please don't take us to the playground, man," because you can get so much work done with body weight. That's one thing. The other thing is that you kind of want to have, like, say to directly answer your question, Paul, like along the way, you know, if you're training to go to, say, ruck-based or water-based selection, you got to train for that sport specifically. You know, if you're already wherever you're at and you're not going to get tested on specific things, then you can kind of switch to a general physical preparedness style training and just be really kind of an 80% solution no matter what comes up. Right. And then you get a little older, like with myself and anybody in my age bracket that has had a similar experience to me. Like right now, I do a third of my training time is staple lifts. What I mean by that is functional. There are 3 planes in the body. There's the sagittal or longitudinal plane, so that's up and down. There's like coronal or frontal plane, which is push and pull. And then there's the transverse plane, which is twisting. right? So in any programming, I say you got to push, you got to pull, squat or hinge. When I say hinge, that's the movement you make with your hips and your posterior chain when you're doing a deadlift. And then you got to twist. And then in that, so I'll take a third of my time is going to be those staple lifts to either maintain or maybe even improve strength and functional capacity. Then I'm going to do some auxiliary work. That's going to be the little stuff that maybe I'm going to do face pulls, because I got shoulder problems. And so getting my traps strong is going to helps with my shoulders. I have all these little auxiliary or pre-fatigue lifts that I do around the staple lift. And then a third of it is physical therapy, basically, that I have learned from physical therapists, from being sent to the physical therapist because I have the issues that I have. And so that's what my training looks like now, is because I'm trying to not get hurt. I'm also trying to improve things that tend to hurt all the time. I want to stay as strong as possible, and I want some level of like respiratory endurance. And then there's some auxiliary stuff I can plug in. And that's where you would plug in, like, if you want to do curls, man, do curls. You got a little spot, you can do them twice a week, knock yourself out. Or maybe you want to do some like ab work or whatever. But with those staple lifts and with the auxiliary, that's where you make sure you're getting a push and a pull. You're going to get a squat and a hinge. And you're going to do some twisting. And so that, that could be anything from Russian twists with the med ball when you're sitting on the ground. It can be cable pulls, from one shoulder, left shoulder down to your right hip, or from your right hip up to your left shoulder. That twisting motion. There's a lot of kettlebell work that you can do that, like Turkish get-ups. It's that twist in there. And that is the twist is the one thing, that transverse plane, that people that don't pay enough attention to. But the downstream and the cross body stuff is huge, because I can have an issue in my left glute that's causing me right shoulder problems.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and so I've only learned that stuff because I've had to see so much chiropractic work and so much physical therapy, just due to my say challenges and injuries over the years. Let
me have a question. I just got a question here. I'm just thinking, are most injuries as a result of twisting type movement? Or
I don't know.
Okay. I don't think we do a very good job of working out that type of, in that plane. And I think I know myself, I've injured myself doing twisting type activity. And I was thinking it was probably because I wasn't trained doing twisting. I'm not really working those twisting type muscles when I look over my history.
Yeah, I didn't even know like there were 3 planes.
Yeah, me neither.
10 years ago, first time I heard a guy say something about it, I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. And then really I had a chiropractor who is a human movement pattern guy. He used to be a bodybuilder. And so he's done a ton of training, super well educated on this stuff, and has taught me a lot about it. But he's the one that really explained to me how these planes work, and the fact that the transverse plane gets ignored so much, which is amazing that a guy like Pavel, who's brought the kettlebell to the U.S. from Russia. A lot of if you study his stuff and do his programming, you're going to do a lot of movements that require what feel like some really weird twisting. If anybody who's not done a Turkish get-up, look it up and try it, because and so I think the transverse training connects. We have these overdeveloped push and pull and up and down capacities, but we don't. There's a lot of connective transverse plane stuff that is underdeveloped. And so I don't know if it causes more injuries, but it certainly doesn't help.
Yeah.
And that, one thing to mention too, for any beginners, is that I heard this from a guy who used to be an Olympic coach, like Olympic gymnastics athletes. And he would take a collegiate gymnast, and he'd put them through months of transition before they could begin to do the things that were required of an Olympic gymnast. And what he said is that the connective tissue, so you think ligaments, tendons, things like that, it takes 10 times as long to develop connective tissue as it does muscle.
Yeah.
So what that means to people is that you literally get strong enough to hurt yourself really fast.
Right, and those are the worst kind of injuries they have because they take the longest to heal from.
They take a long time to heal, which takes you out of the game, which is why one of the first principles is don't get hurt.
Right.
And then right behind that, like, you know, don't get hurt. Point B is if you do get hurt, train around it.
Yeah.
Don't stop training.
Right.
Train around it. You know, it's like the guy who gets his knee done and can't do anything with his left leg for some period of time, but by 2 months later, when he can start using his left leg, he can do pistol squats on his right leg, like 50 of them, and he can do 50 pull-ups.
Yep.
Train around it, because you want to keep that engine running, so it'll heal faster.
Yeah, the worst thing we do for injured people is put them on profile and make them, sit around that.
Put them on profile and bed rest.
Right. That's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah, man. Just bring them out and let them do what they can do, because it's only helping.
So, Jason, you mentioned, we cover a lot of field here. One of the areas I think it would be helpful for me also is just kind of hitting a little bit on the kitchen. Right, you talked about staying off the sugar. Bread's going to turn into sugar. Kind of like give us some pointers for like somebody that's just talk to me like I'm a 4-year-old, and just tell me kind of set the playing field for that if you could.
Okay, I'd love to do it. And almost everybody's heard the little quip that abs are made in the kitchen. Yeah. And so along those lines,
I didn't learn that until I was like in my 30s, though.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no,
so
you work out. Yeah, sit-ups ain't going to fix it.
They're like, I want to lose some weight. That's kind of their priority is maybe shed a few pounds or whatever. Really, you don't need a specific workout for that. Don't spend a bunch of time trying to figure out the best workout to lose weight. Because at least, I don't know. At least I'm just going to make up 80% of your success in that endeavor is going to have to do with nutrition, not with the type of workout you're doing. So, do what sounds good. It's definitely good to move around. It certainly helps. Burning calories is a good thing, but you can burn them however, right? You don't need a weight loss program. You need to stop eating some of the stuff you're eating. And I found no simpler and truer description of nutrition than, I'm ripping this off from Greg Glassman, but basically eat meat, vegetables, nuts, seeds, some berries and fruit, and little to no sugar. And only eat enough to sustain lean body mass.
So what do you think about what do you think about like the what they call the caveman diet? Like meats, veggies, fruits. What are your thoughts on that? If you just use that, is there some flaws?
Pretty much
in that?
what I just described.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot of different types of say nutritional programs or diets to see which one was the best for me. And that paleo diet worked really well for me. In my case, I combined it just anecdotally. There used to be a 40-30-30 diet called the zone diet, which is 40% carbohydrates, 30% protein, and 30% fat. Well, then I took that framework and went paleo with it, because the zone guy didn't care how you got your calories. You could get them from sugar or fruit or whatever. He didn't really make a lot of distinction about that. Well, paleo does. And so I took kind of paleo version, which is, meat and vegetables, and you want to get your carbohydrates from vegetables, not from bread, and stuff like that, and plug that into that 40-30-30 protocol. But I ended up going, when I was figuring out what my caloric intake needed to be roughly based on how much I was training, more like 30% carbohydrates, 40% protein, and 30% fat. But then what I did with the fat is I found that I could cut down on the carbohydrates if I ate more fat. So I went to like 40% protein, 40% fat, and 20% carbohydrates. And that worked really well for me, except in a competitive environment. I had to eat more carbohydrates. If I was competing, say, like at a little local CrossFit competition, or, I was, say, at a school trying to, whatever, I had to eat more carbohydrates.
Yeah,
so that was the exception to that rule.
Yeah, that's a great point, too, is I've done the paleo caveman diet, and my body's like, I need some carbs, man. So, you have to, this is a balance. Everything's about balance, right? A golden mean, right? So it
is, and you have to, you're right, Paul, because you have to, every body is different.
Yeah.
And so there's one of the other things that I've done that's been helpful is tested food sensitivities. There's a book called The Virgin Diet, VIRGIN, which is the last name of the author. But essentially it's a 7-week deal where you do a 3-week cleanse, then you test one category of food for a few days, and then you cleanse for another 4 days. Then you test the next category and cleanse again. It takes 7 weeks to do the whole thing. But then you discover what foods are kind of mildly or extremely toxic to you that your body doesn't like. And then you can kind of avoid those things. It doesn't mean you can never eat them again. It just means that you definitely don't want to eat them every day. And then you're going to test some stuff and it's going to have no effect on you. And then that helps. It kind of helps govern the problem with eating stuff that our bodies doesn't like, or the problem with sugar, or the problem with a lot of stuff is that it creates inflammation. And I think at this point in time, most people know that care at all about nutrition, is that it's the inflammation that's a problem. It attacks our immune system, causes joint pain and a number of other things. And so when they talk about paleo and other stuff like that, a lot of times elimination diets are typically low inflammation diets.
Well,
you don't want to.
You kind of touched on fasting. Is there benefits of that?
Absolutely. So if you say you take that 100 words or less, meat, vegetables, nuts, seeds, fruit, no sugar, and then just eat enough to sustain lean body composition, the subcomponents of that you get into are like, well, is it going to be grass fed? Are my vegetables going to be raw or homegrown? Am I going to eat sprouted nuts, which are better for you? And you get down in like sustainment calories. Well, that could be growth calories. And I'm jacking a bunch of steel. I want to gain 5 pounds of muscle. You're going to eat more. I want to lose weight. You're going to eat less. Fasting and intermittent fasting kind of fall under that too when it comes to levels of sustainment in terms of caloric intake. But fasting has other benefits as well, because it enables our guts to heal. And gut health is so central to holistic health. Yes. That you can't achieve holistic health if you ignore gut health. Yeah, it is worthy of consideration and investigation. So fasting plays a key role in gut health, or at least is a benefit along those lines. And it's worth doing. And intermittent fasting has gotten a lot of popularity. I do that kind of naturally. I usually don't eat until about 11 in the morning, and I eat dinner at maybe 6. So I don't eat between probably 6 p.m. and 11 in the morning most times, other than like I'll drink, a shake after I train. And then I eat a lot between lunchtime and the time I go to bed, like and dinner. Like I eat huge portions when I sit down, typically because of that. But then beyond that, there are a lot of other reasons to fast too. But the food sensitivities thing is another subcomponent of that simple version. And then there's some moral sensibility stuff with some folks. Maybe they don't think eating meat's okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine, but you're gonna have to figure out where you're getting your protein from,
Right.
and not any protein. All proteins are not created equal. Bioavailability is another big point. You may think you're getting it, but your body can't absorb it, so you're not really getting it. So you got to figure that out. So everything's kind of a trade-off along those lines. You want to experiment with yourself, and when you're experimenting with foods, you got to isolate the variable, meaning that I can't stop eating 4 things and then figure out why I feel better. I got to stop eating one thing and see if it makes me feel better, or start eating one thing and see if that makes me feel better. I can't do more than one thing at a time. Otherwise, I'm not going to know what's working and what's not. And the same is true for supplements. There's all kinds of supplements out there, but you got to research, experiment with yourself, take as few as possible. And I always recommend cycling them, go on and go off. And if you're testing them to see, it's got to be one thing at a time. See if it makes a difference. So isolate the variable.
There's a fantastic gyms, pun intended. GEMS that you can use at the gym, and you don't actually need a gym. I think that is a holistic discussion on what you call general physical preparedness training. I think that's really important. I think I've got a lot of good things to work on. I mean, like you said, it's about everything. It's about not just jack and steel. It's about doing a little running, and then reminded that we need to eat right. And this just it gets more, I would say, more important or harder as you get older. And we do need to, if we do want to live a little longer, we're not all guaranteed our 72 years, but we can set we can put ourselves on the best foot forward to do that. If we're going to eat right, and then not be that fat body. I think it's important. Part of being a man is if somebody breaks the door down, then you can just get into the stomp somebody into oblivion mode. And it would be good if you're able to be fit and do that instead of having trouble getting off the couch or whatever.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because
come on, man.
Okay. I mean, you got to defend your family, but I mean, at work, I mean, you're going to be, you're better at handling stress. You're going to be better around other people.
Absolutely.
You're going to do a better job at the work. You're not going to be, acting like a chick and reacting, emotionally to everything, right? This is part of just, I think, being a man and just taking care of yourself and being able to do the things that you're supposed to do in life.
Yeah.
I mean,
man. Yeah. Like it's a form of leadership, and like it or not, men have responsibilities, and I can try and shirk them, but when I do, it makes me less useful, which makes me less of a man.
There you go.
And my wife ordered a new couch recently. It was awesome, man. And she was gone and I was gone, and delivery guy showed up, and he dropped that rig like right at the end of my driveway. Boom. So he delivered the couch. Oh, Lord. Well, that's great until I get home, and that thing probably about 300 pounds. This bitch is like electric and stuff. I call my buddy. Yeah, I call my buddy up. I'm like, hey, man, I need this couch in my house.
Yeah. Hey, what are you doing?
This happened
this afternoon. Yeah.
It was no joke, gentlemen. I'm telling you. And we got that thing in there, and it was like, we broke a sweat, and we didn't have to carry it that far, but we had to turn it on, on its side and get it through the door and not knock the lamp over and all that crap. And I'm like, dude, it's a miracle that we were both able to carry this thing in as heavy as it is and not hurt ourselves.
That's that's functional fitness.
Yeah.
That's it right there, man.
Very nice.
It's all because I never know when I'm going to get home from work and I'm going to have a 250-pound couch sitting.
You never know. You never know, man.
You just don't know, man.
Yeah. Hey, fantastic, sir. I mean, for those that didn't know, this is Jason Dougherty. I always say your name wrong. I don't know why, but Jason Dougherty.
There's no wrong way to say it.
Yeah, be a boxer. If you don't have a copy of that, find that out wherever you get your books. It's got a lot in there about a lot of the stuff we just talked about, and how to go through life with a purpose. For a life, as they say, a life without introspection is not worth living. And how better way to start the year,
Absolutely.
and not just and have a resolution. I mean, as I think we've already debunked that, but something that will last, a mindset that will last. So thank you, sir, for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Pinelander podcast. If you enjoy our unique content, please consider supporting our sponsors. Soft News provides special operations news from around the world. It's where Paul and I go to keep abreast of what's going on within the SOF community. Check them out at soft.news. American Partisan. It's the vanguard movement of Western civilization. Be sure to check them out at americanpartisan.org. And, of course, Blacksmith Publishing. We've been serving the warrior class since 2013. They have great titles written for warriors, by warriors. If you're looking for excellent reference material or just want to enjoy a great novel, be sure to check out the bookstore. Or if you enjoy hanging out with warriors, come spend some time with us in the G-Base over at the Pinelander podcast. All that's at blacksmithpublishing.com. Until our next meeting, stay mentally and tactically smart, physically and spiritually strong, and socially astute. To each other we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. May God continue to bless Pineland.